Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We might make a start. Welcome to the Georges River Local Planning Panel meeting for Thursday, the 17th of October 2019. We are the panel who have been appointed by the Council to determine specific development applications, including DAs that are on the agenda today, in accordance with the requirements of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act. My name is Paul Bogotis. I'm the chair of this meeting this afternoon, and the panel members with me today are Milan Marecic, who's an expert member to my right, Mr. John Brockhoff to my left is also an expert, and to my far left is Mr. Aaron Sellers, our community representative. I'm required to advise you that under the provisions of the Act, this meeting of the panel is being live streamed and will be made available on the Council's website. Everyone addressing the panel today must ensure that they speak clearly into the microphone for that purpose. When speaking at this meeting, members of the public should ensure their speech is respectful and appropriate. Any person who uses defamatory, discriminatory or offensive language may be exposed to liability to which the Council and this panel take no responsibility for. The panel have received completed assessment reports from the Council staff on the applications before us today. The panel have also undertaken inspections of sites and nearby localities of the matters on the agenda today as well. We will deal with the three matters in order of the agenda, which is 2 to 12 Lime Kiln Road, Lugano, Beale Reserve, Rona Street, Peakhurst, and then the planning proposal for the Georges River Local Environmental Plan 2020. As required by the Local Planning Panel Code of Conduct, panel members are required to disclose any conflicts of interest with respect to any matter on the agenda today. The relevant forms prescribed by the Department of Planning, DPI as it's now known, have been completed and are tabled for the Council to include for public inspection. And I'll have those declarations with me today, so if you wish to look at those, they're available, and they'll also be tabled on the Council's website. No panel member today has declared any conflict of interest. As we progress through the matters on the agenda, only those persons who have been registered with the Council prior to this meeting to speak will be permitted to address this panel. Each person will be given a 3-minute period to address the panel, but if you need longer time, as the chair, I have discretion to allow further time for each speaker. In each item, we'll also hear from objectors first, if there are objectors to any proposal. I would ask those persons that are seeking to address the panel that come forward and sit in front of us and talk clearly into the microphone. Once we've heard all the various speakers who have registered to speak for particular items on the agenda, we'll move to the next item. Members of the public are free to leave the meeting after their item has been dealt with. Once we've heard all the speakers who have registered to speak on each application, we'll then adjourn for the closed session to deliberate and to make decisions, and those decisions will be published on the Council's website tomorrow. So we'll go to the first item, which is the DA for 2 to 12 Lime Kiln Road, Lugano. Registered to speak, we have Christy Hodgkinson. Please come forward, ma'am. Now, Mr. Peter Ezrail isn't here today, I take it?
No, he isn't.
Right.
He was due, but hasn't quite surfaced yet.
All right. Okay. Well, the floor's all yours.
Thank you. First of all, we'd like to thank Council very much for the recommendation provided in the assessment report. We're very pleased that we've managed to get to this outcome with it. We're happy to answer any questions that the panel may have, but aside from that, the only item we'd like to raise is condition 10, which relates to the development contributions. I have had a discussion with the assessment officer this morning and yesterday in relation to the amount that has been tabled. Unfortunately, it wasn't recognised the existing dwelling composition on the site. There is an error in both the original development consent and also the modification conditions with respect to what is actually on the site at the moment. I understand the assessment planner was seeking some clarification from Council's Section 94 planner today on the issue. What hasn't been factored in summary is that there are 2 existing dwellings on the property of 2 bedrooms each, which are known as 10 to 12 Limekiln Road and also 1041C. We have provided to council a copy of the rates notice that demonstrates that that particular property is being levied for both commercial and residential purposes. There's a split rating notice over it. There is also an existing dwelling fronting Forest Road, which is a 3-bedroom dwelling, which has been incorporated into the calculations. To confuse the issue a little bit more, there is also a second dwelling fronting Forest Road, is also of a 3-bedroom composition. So council's understanding when they imposed the condition whether there were 2 3-bedroom dwellings. We have subsequently advised them that there is the additional 2 dwellings on the property to the rear of 1041C. The only concern that council's assessment planner raised was whether or not one of the 3-bedroom dwellings has consent. I'm instructed by our client that it was constructed pre-1958 when the family purchased the property, so there was probably no need for a consent at the time. That's just a matter that we appreciate, obviously, some clarification on before the consent's issued to make sure we don't need to seek an amendment.
Well, I'm here to make your day better.
Thank you.
Hand you a memo that's just been prepared by the council officer that I think you may have been speaking to today, but there's the recalculation. So if you just take a moment to look at that.
So we take no issue with the contribution rate, it matches ours. Council staff have obviously taken a position in this number that because they cannot find a valid consent for the second 3-bedroom dwelling, that's not included in these calculations, which we understand. So on that basis, we agree with the number that's in council's memo.
All right, okay, so thank you. Nothing further? All right, just please remain seated and I'll see if there are any questions to the panel. No questions. No questions. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time. Now, I understand Mr. Peter Israel's arrived. Is that correct? Would you like to address the panel, sir? Is there anything?
If there's any questions.
I don't think. I'll just ask the panel. Are there any questions, Mr. Israel?
No.
All right, thank you. That concludes that item. We now move to the next item on our agenda, which is the application concerning the drainage pipes at 25 Verona Street, Peakhurst. There's no one registered to speak in relation to that matter, so a decision will be taken by the panel later this afternoon and published on the council's website. We now move to the next item on the agenda, which is the planning proposal for the Georges River Local Environmental Plan 2020. And registered to speak is Mr. David Hoy, a town planner from Urbis. Please come forward, sir.
Just give David as the client consent group.
Okay. Are you intending to make a submission, sir?
Only if you've got any questions.
Okay. Well, for the record, your name, please.
Jamie Gordon.
Jamie Gordon.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I'll grant leave for you to speak if you believe you have any issues you want to raise with us.
Thank you.
Okay. Sorry. And you're from?
Centre Group.
Centre Group. All right. Thank you, Mr. Hoy. The floor is all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and panel members. This will take about 4 minutes, not 3.
Pardon me?
This will take about 4 minutes, not 3, just so you're aware.
Well, that's fine. You can have your 4 minutes. I might even give you 5.
Just want to be up front so I don't sound like a racehorse. Okay. Well, thank you for the opportunity to speak to the panel today. We've sent through something yesterday in accordance with the panel's guidelines, which I think you might have
read that.
So earlier this week, I addressed Council's Planning Committee, which considered Council's draft LSPS and expressed my client's broad support for Council's LSPS. However, excuse me, at the time we also did raise specific concern over Council's recommendation in its LSPS report that stated in respect of the Westfield-Hurstville site that to quote, a B3 zone has been recommended for the site in LEP 2020 with existing HLEP 1994, height 19 metres and FSR 2:1, and it went on from there. This approach has been carried through to the planning proposal that's before you today, and it's reflected in paragraph 117 and 118 of today's report. And accordingly, my client wishes to express its concerns if this recommendation is carried through to the gazetted version of LEP 2020. I note on page 99, paragraph 94 of your report, that LEP 2020 is being guided by several overarching principles, to quote, which include ensure harmonised controls do not result in the net loss of development potential, and amongst other things also to retain existing development controls where the status quo can be maintained. It's clear in my opinion that the recommendation in respect to the Westfield-Hurstville site does not adhere to these overarching principles because, firstly, development potential will be lost as residential development is currently permitted on the site under the existing city centre 3B zoning in 1994 LEP, which continues to apply to the site. Excuse me. In other words, rezoning of the Westfield site in its totality to B3 as part of LEP 2020 effectively amounts to a downzoning. A B4 zone is the appropriate translation, and that's consistent with Council's own stated principles, and it's been applied to the Tracy Street car park, which is also Zone 3B under the 1994 LEP. Council's own supporting studies that have informed LEP 2020 and the LSPS confirm the suitability of Westfield's site to accommodate residential as well as commercial mixed use. Secondly, the proposed FSR and height controls that are in the planning proposal before you today date back over 20 years and do not align at all with the current approved built form. They are DCP controls. Centre Group would recommend that the application of an FSR and height control to its site in a manner that ensures Westfield-Hurstville can continue to evolve as a centre to provide employment uses and remain relevant in the short term. As we said on Tuesday night, Centre Group remains, Monday night, Centre Group remains strongly committed to supporting the long-term evolution and development of the Hurstville Town Centre in a way that broadly is consistent with Council's long-term vision. It recently reaffirmed this position in correspondence to Council, including a clear intent to engage with the subsequent LEP 2022 process. But in the meantime, however, it's clear to me and to Centre Group that LEP 2020 currently proposed, does not harmonise the controls for the Westfield site and therefore is contrary to the Council's stated intent for LEP 2020. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions, as is my client, Jamie Gordon from Centre Group.
We may have some questions for you.
Look, no, I think it's the submission's clear. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Sellers?
No.
Yeah, no questions.
Okay. All right. I don't have any further questions. I've read your submission. I've heard what you've had to say with respect to Westfields, and it seems that you're after some more bespoke controls to deal with that site alone.
Look, I think it's fair to say that you've probably been briefed by Council staff. We've been on a journey with Council that unfortunately resulted in the withdrawal of a planning proposal after a number of years of negotiation. But that doesn't mean that Centre Group are just packing up their bags and walking away. So in the meantime, we want to ensure that what we have there at the moment is properly reflected in controls, consistent with the LEP 2020 process. We're well aware of the staged LEP process that Council has resolved to adopt, but importantly, the studies that have been used to inform both the LSPS and by inference the LEP do talk to the suitability of the site to accommodate residential. Now, in what way, shape or form that may take, obviously we're back to negotiating that with Council. However,
and can I ask, is the current controls within your future plans? I mean, does that accommodate for they don't go anywhere near where you'd like to be?
if you look at what the former planning proposal had, No, and we recognise that.
We haven't had privy to that. or
Yeah, no,
haven't
that's
been-
fine, and I understand that. However, things like incremental works to the shopping centre in the short term, and some of the things that Centre Group are contemplating over the, in the immediate short term would include incremental expansion of the rooftop dining terrace which exists there. At the moment, we have a set of DCP controls that apply to the site that have clearly been varied on numerous occasions in the past by council.
And can I ask, Mr. Hoy, is there a master plan that you've got in mind for how you'd like to redevelop the centre? And I'm talking, is this a 5-year strategy, 10-year strategy? Or?
Well, maybe that's best if Jamie answers that, if that's all right with you, Mr. Chair.
So we had a longer term master plan that would have been more of a 10-year strategy. That master plan, we do have broken into smaller chunks. And we've got, like David mentioned, we've got some aspirations around our rooftop dining entertainment that we'd like to grow, which we'd like to get on and do in the coming years. So
Is this akin to what's happening at Miranda, that type of style?
on the rooftop,
thing?
yeah. So we've got one there at the moment, but it's one of our first and
Yeah.
not one of our best. We'd like to make that a lot bigger and better.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I suppose we've got short and long-term goals, which sat within our master plan.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's fair to say also, Mr. Chair, that, talking to Jamie's long-term vision, Centre Group invested significant money in reinforcing the superstructure of part of the shopping centre when they last did the last upgrade in 2015. Now, that's been a catalyst for some of the conversation, and I know that investing in infrastructure is not a planning consideration necessarily, but I guess the point being is that there is a capacity there to accommodate something in the long term as far as mixed use is concerned. It doesn't mean it's all residential, and we acknowledge that. The master plan that was presented before council and we've been negotiating over the last 4 years, did talk to a mix of both commercial space and retail space and some residential space.
Okay, and that master plan council has?
That was presented to them as a plan proposal. So that's what we've been negotiating, and ultimately led to its withdrawal recently. So in the meantime, we want to make sure that the current state of play remains, and the short-term things, as Jamie just described, can continue to proceed whilst we re-engage with council through the 2022 process.
Yeah, all right, okay, I think that's clear. No further questions, panel? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the Georges River Local Planning Panel meeting for the 17th of October 2019. I declare the meeting closed at 4:17 p.m. Thank you for your attention.